What do you call a government that takes £100 million of taxpayer money to house asylum seekers in council properties while 1.33 million British households sit on social housing waiting lists? According to Lee Anderson, you call it a disgrace, and his advice to councils considering participating in the scheme, 3 words: just say no. The Reform UK MP for Ashfield just tore into Labour's latest migration policy in Parliament, calling it a madcap idea that prioritizes illegal migrants over British citizens. The policy is a £100 million pilot scheme where councils acquire and refurbish around 900 properties specifically for asylum seekers. Labour says it's a pragmatic fix to reduce the scandalous reliance on expensive hotels. Critics say it's yet another kick in the teeth the British people who are being treated as second-class citizens in their own country. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where we break down the migration policies that are tearing Britain apart. Let's dive into this controversy, why it's causing such fury, and whether there's any middle ground or if we're heading for Labour's first major migration backlash of 2026. So here's what's actually happening. The Home Office is funding a £100 million pilot scheme. This money enables councils to acquire and refurbish around 900 properties. Lee Anderson describes them as new builds, but the scheme primarily focuses on purchasing existing stock or renovating derelict units. These properties are specifically for people awaiting asylum decisions, so we're talking about asylum seekers, people who've claimed asylum and are waiting for their applications to be processed. These homes would be leased back to the government initially before eventually integrating into the general social housing stock. Nearly 200 local authorities have shown interest. 5 Labour-led councils have confirmed participation: Brighton and Hove, Hackney, Peterborough, Thanet, and Powys. So this is real, this is happening, and it's causing absolute fury. Lee Anderson raised this in Parliament during oral questions to the Home Department. He grilled Border Security and Asylum Minister Mr. Norris on whether the plan would help smash the gangs behind channel crossings. That's sarcasm, obviously. Anderson doesn't think housing asylum seekers in council properties will do anything to stop criminal gangs smuggling people across the channel. He's pointing out what he sees as the absurdity of the policy. You're rewarding people who came here illegally. That's his argument, and that just encourages more people to come. Norris dismissed Anderson's concerns. He urged the Reform MP to spend less time reading newspapers and more time listening to what is said in this chamber. That's a patronizing response. It's basically saying you don't understand the policy, sit down and be quiet. Norris highlighted an impending asylum policy statement as the most significant change to our asylum system in a generation. Big claims. The statement aims to slash UK asylum claims while they fall across the EU. So Labour is promising that asylum numbers will come down. They've been promising that for months. The numbers haven't come down. In fact, boat crossings in 2025 were the second highest on record. So there's understandable skepticism about whether this new policy statement will achieve anything. Norris insisted that reducing numbers is the primary key to closing costly asylum hotels, rejecting 3-word answers in favor of what he described as a serious policy approach. So he's having a go at Anderson's just say no response, saying that's simplistic and serious policy requires more nuance, which is fair in the abstract. Complex problems require complex solutions, but the public doesn't experience this as a complex policy debate. They experience it as the government spending their money to house people who entered the country illegally while British citizens can't get housing. That's the political reality regardless of the policy nuance. Anderson then stepped up his attack on X, formerly Twitter. He reposted a Reform UK video of the exchange and captioned it simply, "Just say no." 3 words, blunt, clear. It's a rallying cry. It's telling councils that if they have any sense, if they care about their local residents, they should refuse to participate in this scheme. In a separate post, Anderson declared, "Social housing for illegal migrants." Today, I asked the minister about the plans to build council houses for illegal migrants. Once again, the question was dodged. Funny that. Notice the language. Illegal migrants. That's deliberate. Technically, these are asylum seekers whose claims haven't been processed yet. But politically, that distinction doesn't matter to most people. If someone crossed the channel in a small boat, most people consider them an illegal immigrant regardless of whether they've claimed asylum. The legal technicality doesn't change the political perception. Reform UK's official account echoed the sentiment. Say no to council houses for illegal migrants. That post attracted thousands of views and likes within hours. So this is resonating with people. It's not just Anderson being provocative. It's touching a nerve with voters who feel like they're being ignored and that migrants are being prioritized. Whether that perception matches reality is almost beside the point politically. Perception is reality in politics. If people feel like they're being treated as second-class citizens in their own country, they'll vote accordingly. Now let's look at the government's justification for this scheme. Proponents argue it's a pragmatic fix to the scandalous reliance on hotels and private rentals. Currently, approximately 36,000 asylum seekers reside in hotel accommodation at a cost of $145 per night per person. Let's do the math on that. 36,000 people times $145 per night is over $5 million per day. That's around $2 billion per year just on hotel accommodation for asylum seekers. That's unsustainable. It's a waste of money, and it enriches private companies who are making a fortune from government contracts. The contracts with private firms have ballooned to an estimated $15.3 billion. So the government's argument is that buying or refurbishing properties and housing asylum seekers there is cheaper in the long run than paying $145 per night per person in hotels forever. Brighton and Hove leader Bella Sankey hailed the pilot as a win-win that slashes private profits and bolsters local services for long-term savings. So from that perspective, it makes financial sense. You're reducing ongoing costs, you're ending the enrichment of private companies, and you're adding to the housing stock, which eventually can be used for the general population. The government maintains a target to close all asylum hotels by 2029, with Mr. Norris noting a one-third drop in spending has already been achieved through faster processing. So they're saying, look, we're making progress, we're reducing costs, and this is part of the solution. But critics, spearheaded by Anderson, slam it as a disgrace that rewards channel crossers while 1.33 million households languish on England's social housing waiting lists. And this is the crux of the issue. 1.33 million households. That's the highest figure recorded since 2014. British citizens, many of them working people who've paid taxes their entire lives, are stuck on waiting lists for social housing. The wait can be years or even decades in some areas. And now they're seeing the government spending $100 million to house asylum seekers, many of whom entered the country illegally. How is that fair? That's the question Anderson is asking, and it's a question a lot of voters want answered. In a letter to Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, Anderson fumed, "This is outrageous. How many times have I said that British people must be prioritized for British housing? Instead, thanks to Labour, we will have council houses being repurposed exclusively for asylum seekers. And the British taxpayers who are stuck on the housing waiting list are being forced to pay for it." That's powerful rhetoric. British people first, British taxpayers forced to fund housing for people who shouldn't even be here. It's a message that resonates with millions of voters who feel like successive governments have prioritized everyone except them. Anderson called it yet again another kick in the teeth to the British people, who are being treated as second-class citizens in their own country. He proposed instead a policy of detain and deport. Don't house them, don't process their claims over years, detain them and deport them quickly. That's the Reform UK position. It's hardline, but it's popular with a significant chunk of the electorate. Anderson, a former Tory MP who defected to Reform, has repeatedly decried the scheme as disgusting, arguing it pits migrants against locals in a fight for scarce resources. And that framing is important. It's not migrants versus locals in the abstract. It's a real competition for limited resources. There aren't enough council houses. There isn't enough social housing. So when the government allocates some of that scarce housing to asylum seekers, it means British citizens waiting longer. That's a zero-sum situation, and politically, that's toxic. His stance resonates online, with ex-users demanding no to council houses for illegal immigrants. Others linked it to broader migration woes. What's not to like? Our money spent on immigrant council houses. The sentiment is clear. People are angry. Defenders counter that asylum seekers, who are legally distinct from illegal immigrants until their claims are adjudicated, are not eligible for standard benefits or permanent housing immediately. This is a technical point about legal categories. An asylum seeker is someone who's claimed asylum. They're not technically illegal until their claim is rejected. If their claim is accepted, they're refugees and entitled to stay. If it's rejected, then they become illegal and should be deported. So calling all asylum seekers illegal immigrants is inaccurate. But politically, that